റഹീം അതേമാതിരി റെക്കോർഡ് ചെയ്തേക്കണം.
Yeah, we have 60 participants in this.
Yeah, now we are live on YouTube.
Let's start.
Yes, we can start.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first session of Darsana Career Explorer 2022. I'm Abhishek Suresh. I'm a security researcher with the Cisco Talos Research Group, and I will be the moderator for today's session, which discuss various prospects of IT industry. I'm pretty sure that most of you are well aware of Darsana, our social commitment, and initiatives we undertake to make a significant and positive impact in the life of socially and economically sidelined people. However, let me introduce Darsana to those who are unaware of our activities. The Darsana is now a global organization with more than 1,000 engineers who graduated from NSS College of Engineering, Palakkad, who are now entrepreneurs, technocrats, bureaucrats, farmers, politicians. However, rather than limiting ourselves or our thoughts as just an alumni organization who cherish the heritage of a great college, we do active intervention on Kerala's socio-political, economical, environmental, and technological issues to have a great vision or to envision an equitable and modern society. I would really like to take a moment to draw your attention to a few of our significant initiatives. In my opinion, Darsana Ignite is one of the most popular flagship program of Darsana with hundreds of participants every year. Darsana Ignite aims to create a sustainable ecosystem for nurturing innovations and promoting social startups in Kerala. In this process, we are really proudly partnering with the Kerala Technical University and Digital University Kerala in this great project, along with the several other top names in the industry. Another example is Darsana Course Explorer. It's another program that targets engineering aspirants to familiarize themselves with the main branches of engineering, its career prospects, the syllabus, and skill it requires to complete the course successfully in a timely manner. However, out of all, like Darsana Bridge program is one of my personal favorite, and I consider it as like a really empathetic program we are undertaking. Darsana Bridge is a great initiative to vanish the social and knowledge gap between students who are coming from backward and economically limited families versus those who are coming from privileged families. Trust me, this is not an easy task. We do it by constantly involving and attending to their educational, emotional, and social problems. Along with this, there are like several other social initiatives which we undertake, like webinars on socio-political and technological topics, vegetarian scholarship for top students of NSS College of Engineering Palakkad who are coming from who are really good in their studies and who are coming from economically limited family background. There are several other scholarships and education-based initiatives coming from Darsana, including Predict Scholarship and Prabhakaran Endowment Award for the best final year projects. And the same note, Darsana My Home is another major program that aims to build sustainable, economic, and environmental friendly houses for the needy people of our society. We have already built around like 9 homes in last 4 or 5 years and planning to develop more with the collaboration of like-minded organization in the near future itself. Unfortunately, I couldn't mention all of our initiatives due to the time limitation. I would request every one of you to go to our website darsana.in and to our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And we request everyone to please do like and subscribe to our pages. Now, let's move to our main program agenda of the day. Today is our first session of the Darsana Career Explorer, and we will be discussing about IT industry. I'm super excited and thrilled that we picked this topic as our first session, as basically I'm coming from an IT background. Also, this is an era where everyone and everything is connected to the internet. Starting from your home appliances, your gadgets, to space stations and rockets, there is literally nowhere you can ignore the existence of an IT engineer or even an IT department. As IT is like really overloaded team and the scope is enormous, It is technically impossible to cover everything in a single session. So we are planning to cover very highly requested topics in our first section, which include IT application development, testing and support, consulting ERP systems, embedded systems, product lifecycle management, infrastructure and network engineering services, engineering services. However, please reach out to us if you want to include more topics in the upcoming sessions. We'll be super happy to have those in our upcoming sessions. That being said, let me welcome our very respected panel members, Mr. Mukundan A, Mr. Arnan T, and Mr. Dinesh I. Mr. Mukundan will be handling our first session, which include infrastructure and network services, engineering services, embedded systems, product lifecycle management. Mukundan has been part of IT service organization for last 22 years. He has designed systems for various automotive chains such as BMW, Audi, Mercedes, GM, Ford, Chrysler, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, and aerospace companies such as Airbus and Boeing. He also has consulted with the leading organizations such as Lockheed Martin, Rockwell Collins, Fiat, Volvo, and many more global engineering companies. He has spent around close to 5 years in infrastructure service building software products, which basically automatically identify the issues and resolve the issues using artificial intelligence and machine learning system. Mr. Mukundan is a mechanical engineer from 1992 and a postgraduate in manufacturing technology. He started his career with a BPL designing audio systems, and then was a part of ISRO designing cryogenic components for our prestigious GSLV. Let us welcome Mr. Mukundan for his session. Over to you, Mr. Mukundan. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhishek. Just a confirmation, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, just confirm if you can see my screen also. It will be...
Yes, we can see your screen.
Excellent. Thank you, and it was a nice introduction. I will not take much time. I will just jump in and take a few minutes to give an overview on what is IT in India, right? I mean, I'm not going for the global ones. I'm specifically going to be talking a little bit about the Indian stuff. The reason I picked up this is over the last 2 to 3 months, I have been talking to a lot of students and professors, lecturers in NSS. And in fact, I visited the campus more than 5, 6, 7 times over the last 2, 3 months to understand what is in mind of students. Probably I got most of it, but I obviously will not answer to everything. So I also got one feeling that some part of the students are a little bit skeptical, nervous, or whatever nice words we want to use. They are not so excited to be part of IT, right? So I thought I'll give you a bigger picture. What does IT mean for all of us? In fact, anybody following Indian economy over the last 30 years or so, from 92 to till date, we are actually an economic marvel in the whole world. I don't know any other country which has grown to the level we have. China is an exception, and we honestly we don't know what they have done. A lot of data may be questionable, but as a democratic, open country, what we have done is we have in fact pulled out more than 300 million people out of poverty. I mean, this is amazing. Never ever done in the history of the world, right? It's an amazing thing. And I personally was kind of a part of the journey, and looking back at my parents and my grandparents' days, I live like a king today. I mean, comparing to them, right? I'm not really a king, but when I compare relatively, when I compare to them, I have so much of luxuries, and I see that all around. I mean, whatever I could see when I was going to college in your age, today things has completely changed. Now, what is one of the key reasons? Today, if you look at the Indian IT, it's almost 8% of India's GDP itself, which is huge. It was almost non-existent 30 years back, and today it is 8% of India's GDP itself. It's really, really huge. 40 lakh people are working. I mean, if I consider all unorganized, maybe the number may be much bigger, but this is predominantly organized people, right? You compare this to the biggest employer in India, Indian government, central government, their employees are around 41 lakhs. So this is one of the largest, or probably the largest organized sector in India itself. I've given some numbers so that you can correlate with that, right? This is a number I picked up from 2019. That's the latest number I could get from Economic Times. You can go and double check that. The offers made was around 2.2 lakh offers to, to the students in the campus, right? This is huge. Total offers made, it was only 2.5. If you do a math, this will come around 87, 88%. That means the whole campus offers and the opportunity to get a job is, if let me put it in different terms, different words, if I say I don't want to look at IT as an option, I am kind of ignoring 90% of the market itself, right? I have to look at the 10% what is available. This is the latest number I got. This is only the top IT companies, because the last 2 years the demand has gone out of roof. Already they are committed 2 lakhs. So that means if you look at this is only the top 5. If you look at the remaining, it's going to be a huge number. I don't know whether it's going to be 3 lakhs or 3 lakhs plus, and also this is going to be a huge number. By the way, the number of students passing out every year is around 15 lakhs, but that is just a notional number. In the NASSCOMs, which is the Indian IT kind of government arm, what it says is around 25% of the people are only really employable. That means there are a lot of institutes and colleges which are churning out people who really can't even be employed, right? So around 3.5, 4 lakhs are really employable. Out of that, almost everybody may end up with a job this year and next year. The other interesting fact is more than 80%. This actually have been conservative. Probably, if you look at the top 5, this will be more than 95% of the revenue comes from the Western world. When I say Western world, probably 60% comes from Americas, around 25-30% comes from Europe, and rest from Australia and Japan. And how does it impact you? Obviously, you work with the best in the people, as Abhishek was saying. You work with the best companies in the world. You learn the best new technologies which are available on that particular day. And obviously, when your profile will show that up in 2, 3, 4, 5 years when you are into the job. Of this, maybe most of you will know this is roughly 4 lakhs. You can go up to 6, 7, 8 lakhs if there is some niche work coming in, or it may be slightly lesser. It's a tier 2 kind of organization. Extremely important. I have been part of a large private organization, BPL, which used to manufacture TVs earlier. I started my career there. Then I went into ISRO. I spent more than 3.5 years or close to 4 years in ISRO. But from a work environment, work culture, the importance given to an employee and his or her comfort and safety is one of the best under the sun. I have not seen such kind of care and importance given to people when not only when they are in their office, but even when they are outside, right? And the irony today is, if Indian IT shuts down their shop for even 1 or 2 days, most of the global Fortune 500 is typically the largest 500 companies in the world. Most of the top 500 companies will be in trouble because we guys manage their work. So it's other way around. It's not that we will be in trouble if they don't give us work. We have gone to such a level that they will be in trouble if we don't work, right? This again I have taken from CompShare. So I'll keep referring to where I took this data so that you can also you can go back and refer and ensure that whatever we are talking is broadly in line, and you can double check and triple check everything. So this is from CompShare. This is also an year-old data, 2020 data. US alone is a 1.7 trillion market, 1.7 trillion. That means globally you can put it almost double. It could be around $3.5 trillion market, right? And just to compare it, India's GDP is not even 3 trillion as of today. So it's actually bigger than the Indian whole GDP itself, right? Now, even though we have so many, I am going to focus only on the right top and the left one, because that's where more than 98, 99% of the work you will see in the market, right? Or the campus which comes to you. Broadly, you I divide this into software products. These are the software products. These are simply the products which you use, right from Windows to your Excel to your Adobe Acrobat to Salesforce to mobile application. It can be a Gmail to a Google Map to whatever it is, right? Give me a second. Just give me a second. So this is the software product side, and this is the whole software services side. So this is the whole software services side. If you look at this, there are, I'll go through each one of those for 10 seconds or so, because this is what mostly you will be working on, right? What's IT solution project based? It's a simple project which, like I can say I have to automate something, or you can say, okay, if the students are coming to NSS joining, I want to take everything automated right from they come in, they give me the documents, I upload it to a place, I create a ID for them, I print out a ID, I keep track of everything, right? This is a small project base. Managed services and support I will take together, and in fact, Dinesh will talk a little bit deep in the support side. It's nothing but you have, say, let us assume there are 100 such engineering colleges in Kerala, and one company decides to support everything. So that's the managed services and support, but all the applications which are part of those, they do the managed services and support. This is the kind of high-end part of it, where you do the design of the whole system before you build and architecture it. System integrations are typically you have, so you bring in you design the architecture of the and design, and then you say bring in ABCD kind of things. So somebody has to come and really execute that. You can have a TCS coming and doing it. You can have a Wipro coming and doing it. So those are the typical system integration kind of thing. Cyber security, anything from a VPN to somebody who's hacking into the system, avoiding any of those things. Data processing, business process automation, digital transformation. I mean, I'll keep jumping it because of time. I also realized that the short of time. Data processing is nothing but you get tons of data, clean it up, put it in a way that it is in a database. Business process automation is like a BPO kind of work where you can automate your things. For example, I mean, old times we had to go and fill a form and submit. Today, if you just submit, so a classical example can be when you book a gas cylinder, right? You just call, and then it knows that which number you're calling, it knows your consumer number, it's completely automated and says it's already booked. So digital transformation, whatever you have been doing in paper or have been doing manually, completely moved into a digital way. Software development, very close to IT solution project based, but it could be bigger than that. Consulting is where it could be two parts. One can be a business consulting, where you come there, I have a problem, and people come and figure out what are the reasons for that, and then give you a solution. Or it can be technology consulting, where it says, okay, can I use Amazon for this? Should I go into cloud? Those kind of stuff. Analytics. Today's world, we see tons of analytics, right from cricket to elections to COVID to whatever we see a lot of analytics. R&D services. This is what I will be talking a little bit more. Testing, obvious, value service and distributions, right? I also kept getting questions saying that I may not be good in coding, and how much of coding is really required if I get into IT, right? And trust me, nobody does 100% of coding during their daytime or in their 8 hours or 9 hours of work when they're doing, right? This is kind of an image I have built up saying that what percentage of coding will be there. This is 100% to 0%. There are a lot of roles which don't need coding. There are consulting kind of work which doesn't need coding. Business analysts who document a lot of things. Pre-sales, where you go to the customer and propose saying that this is what this is how I will do the project. This is the cost of the project. This is the time and this is the quality kind of thing. Pure sales, marketing. These things doesn't need coding at all. But said that, this is not a major part of the whole IT organization. This may be a small part of the IT organization. But then there are creative kind of stuff, user experience. That is they can be separated UX and UI. UX is the really how many clicks you should do, where you should click, those kind of things. UI is how do you build that into it, right? UI may need a little bit of coding, but user experience is really kind of artistic kind of work. Mostly the desktop kind of thing, security is very little coding. Nowadays, the testing is slowly catching up. Testing and supporting may need a little bit of coding. Development is the one which will need maximum. That's also, it may end up around 60 to 70%, not that full time. Analytics also will need a little bit of coding over there, right? I'm quickly jumping into the engineering services part. This has 3 components. I have kind of bucketed into for easiness for you guys on your branch of engineering, predominantly a mechanical, civil, and electrical engineering. And I have taken a use case of an automotive industry. I mean, you can take this and put it into an aerospace industry, into a heavy engineering industry, into a earth moving industry, whatever it may be. more or less this will remain the same. You will always start with a concept design. It's more styling and those kind of stuff, artistic kind of stuff. Then you get into initial design. This is more dimension driven, which will have dimensions, but it may not really be good for a end production because it may not be really producible or cheaply producible. It may not stick to all the mandatory regulations of the country or of the authorities, etc. That is what we achieve when you do the detailed design. Once you're done with the detailed design, you get into analysis phase where typically if you're doing automotive, the analysis is either on a, if it is mechanical, it is on a finite element analysis, which is again software driven, or it can be electrical where noise, harness, vibration, those kind of things, or it can be embedded systems or UI UX kind of thing within the automotive, right? Then you get into manufacturing that particular part of the component of the system, then assemble it to the assembly line because most of the OEMs do the assembly. Then once it is sold, the vehicle is sold, how do you do the services? And finally, when everything is done, how do you do the end of life for this thing? So this is more a concept sketching. Mostly this work used to be done in Europe and some work used to be done in Japan and Australia. Sorry, not in the Americas. Nowadays, most of this work gets done in India itself. Once you are done with that, you get into the initial design. This, as I said, will have hard dimensions, but it may not be really legally a car which can be run on the road, right? Then you get into the detailed design. Each and every dimensions are to millimeter to micrometer level. It's designed. Again, CAD and CAE systems are used for all those things. You sit in front of a computer and do all this work. Then it gets into the FEA part, finite element analysis. You do every test. When I started my career, there used to be 50 car models which needs to be manufactured for testing purpose only. They will crash the car, they will go and hit the car from the front, side, back, roll the car because of the accidents, those kind of stuff. Today, hardly 2 or 3 models will be done, and it is only given to the authorities to prove that everything is fine. Everything else is done using a software, a set of softwares, and they predict the performance precisely. Then you do the manufacturing part. This is just a bonnet of one of the cars. You do the manufacturing. It will include all the mechanical plus the electrical and even sometimes even some of the computer sides also. Then finally you get into the assembly. And assembly, when I say it's not only the assembly of the car, it also means the assembly of robots. What kind of robots you should bring in? How do you optimize your own assembly, the CPM, PERT, whatever you study, all these things get implemented over there. Then finally you get into the servicing. Servicing in cars is very different. For example, the servicing in aeroplanes, you want to look at that. If you want to service something inside a wing, personally, one individual has to get into the wing. And so the first thing is safety, right? The wing is so small or hardly a person can enter. You have to ensure that the person can enter and exit. That's the first condition, safety, right? Then you have to ensure that the person has the elbow room and the enough space to do the servicing stuff. All these things are done digitally. You actually simulate a human entering the wing, going inside, putting a nut, removing a nut, tightening. Coming back. If somebody faints inside the wing, how will you get him or her back? Everything is done over there, right? Now I just get into the electronics, computer and electrical engineering branch. I just took an image and put few stars over here. Just look at those stars. Those are the ones which you normally see in our cars, what you would have been quite used to see in a Indian kind of a mid-level car, right? But there are tons of other things which are, which are happening here. Simple example, a few days back, I filled petrol and then started driving my car back home. Within a kilometer, the car started sputtering and I got the engine light on. And when I looked at the manual, it said, if the engine light is on, don't drive, just stop, right? And I was near my home. I took the car home and called the service center. They came back and then they went and it took them a few hours to figure it out. Coincidentally, somehow water went into the petrol and the computer in the car figured out that there is water in the petrol, right? If it was a manually driven, completely manual car, I would have never figured that out. I would have spoiled my engine and I would have spent lakhs and lakhs of rupees to fix it, right? So the amount of computers and electronics which is in today's car is much, probably around 30% of of the overall core itself, which used to be almost zero hardly 10 years back. And as I said, all of things go through the same concept, and all these kind of engineering branches has to play a major role in this. Now we'll get into a completely different angle. This can be from any engineering branch. It doesn't stick to anything. So this is called the product lifecycle management. PLM stands for product lifecycle management. What is product lifecycle management, right? So suppose that Maruti starts manufacturing Maruti 800, say 1980s or early 1990s, right? They keep changing the version, they keep changing the model, they keep changing the parts, components, bumper, engine, everything, right? Suppose that anybody is owning a Maruti vehicle and they want to go and get a servicing done, even if it is 5 years, 10 years, 20 years old, that exact component need to be identified, right? This whole, what you call history of all the parts and components used in a vehicle will be captured in a PLM system. And you go and you just give an engine number or a chassis number or the make and model of the number, it will exactly pull out that particular component. And if it is not available within the servicing center or wherever it is, they can actually request the company directly with a click of a button, right? Similar to that, suppose that Maruti wants to manufacture, say, 1,000 Baleno next month, right? Earlier, what used to do was there is a huge planning and purchase department who will create purchase order for all their manufacturers and their vendors. There will be 2,000, 3,000 vendors will be there. They will create individual purchase order, 100 parts, 1,000 parts, 150 parts, everything they will send. Humongous amount of work. That literally means if you need to manufacture 1,000 cars in a month, you need to plan at least 2 to 3 months ahead, because you have to manually do your work, you have to send your purchase orders to your vendors. They have to plan, they will send it to their vendors and then start doing those parts, right? Today, PLM system, you can just go and say, okay, I need to manufacture Brisa, whatever model, 2022, X, ZX, whatever model, right? One click of a button, the whole PLM system can pull out all the bill of material. It can send electronic purchase orders to all the vendors. It can tell your production line to be ready from 1st of Feb to start this production. Everything will be automated, right from reserving space in your goods or in your storage to bring it in to schedule the time of a quality control engineer to check the components which come in. Everything can be automated, right? And this is huge. This is not only used in automotive, this is used extensively by our apparel guys, Nike, Gap, all these guys use, because they are every year they keep changing their model, shoes, shirts, t-shirts, they keep changing their model, and they procure from multiple countries in the world, and these all gets managed by a PLM system, right? And what you need here, you need more a consulting mindset, you need analytical mindset, and hardly any coding kind of skills. So I'll jump to my last slide. The infrastructure and networking part, what we said, and I'm not going to talk about the slide at all. What I'm going to say is, today, if we do any system, if you are using our mobile and getting a mail, finding a location in Google Map or anything, everything is end of the day running in a server somewhere in the world, and that server needs to be up and live and responding to your request immediately as soon as you click your request button, right? So that typically is called a data center, where all these things are the physically which are driven. But today's world, the data center concept is completely hidden from the end user. What we see is something like a SaaS, which is called a software as a service, or PaaS, which is a portfolio as a service. What you get is, I have a small request, I send the request, that request goes to maybe 5, 10, 50, 100, 1,000 servers. It all gets broken up into individual requests. It goes to those particular servers, gets the processing done, brings back those data, gets it integrated, and just tells me what the answer I need. But behind the scenes, there is a huge amount of processing and networking and analytics, all those things being done. This picture shows you all the stuff which is being done, but it has been simplified in this virtual world to such a level that everything is available in a click of a button, right? So I will pause here. I will hand it over to Dinesh for the next session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukundan, for the beautiful, detailed, and very informative presentation. Before moving to the next session, I request our audience to shoot your questions to the Zoom comment box or YouTube comment box, and we will definitely get back to you in the QA session. Now let's move to our next presentation. Mr. Dinesh will be handling this presentation. He will be covering IT application development, testing, and support. Mr. Dinesh is a senior IT manager with a leading aviation organization, and he has experience of 25 plus years in the industry, focusing on IT service management lifecycle and operations. He is an industrial leader for IT operations to enable highly time-sensitive business stability, performance, and scalability. His experience in managing a large IT landscape involving multiple vendor partners and in-house provided IT services. Let us welcome Mr. Dinesh for his presentation. Over to you, Mr. Dinesh.
Good evening. Abhishek, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but we cannot see you actually. Can you?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just a minute.
All right. Yeah, we can see you and we can hear you.
And you can see my slide also.
Yes,
Thank you.
can see the slide.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, thank you, Darsana, for giving the opportunity to present this. And it's always good to give back what you gained over the years from your experience, from interactions with people, with society, with organizations, your learnings back to the kids, so that it's beneficial for them. Mukundan touched upon a couple of very good points, and it's very interesting. It was very interesting to hear what you were saying. The first slide itself, sometimes give me goosebumps when you talk about the Indian IT industry. There's a joke which goes in California Bay Area, like you throw a stone up, maybe in Palo Alto or in Multipass or in Santa Clara or somewhere in California. 99% chances that it might hit a software engineer from India. That's the probability, and that's the number of people who work in the IT industry in the top Fortune 500 companies. So and the last point which he said, it's also very relevant and interesting. What he said is that we have moved from a stage wherein it is not that the Indian IT industry needs the Fortune 500 and the biggest of the companies. It's the other way around right now. In order for the Fortune 500 companies to run, or the bigger companies to run, you need Indian IT. So that's how it is. So not wasting much time, I'm just getting into the, ideally this should have been the last part of it, because typically if you take the product life cycle, Mukundan was explaining about a product life cycle. If you take a product life cycle, you in the last 2 points which he's mentioned, one is the service and the last one is the end of life. Yeah. So the service part, which is equally important, is what is it? You design, you conceive ideas, you design, you do the best of the detailed design, you architect it rightly, you develop it with the highest minds, and you test it with the highest quality people, and it goes into service. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't help. There is no value being delivered. And this is where the operations part come into the picture to ensure that the lights are on. Is basically there is a business value conceived during the conceptual stage, or the design stage and all these things. The operations, I believe, is to ensure that the business value over a 5-year period or 10-year period or 15-year period is delivered in and out 24/7, 365 days. And that's where operations comes into relevance. So I just thought that being in the airline industry, I thought let me put some glimpse of what happens in normal life if IT goes down. With just a couple of incidents in the last 2-3 years, or maybe 4-5 years back, I just picked up some of the incidents, some interesting small ones, but some in my industry which we see as very this thing. So if you look at the first slide, first picture on the left hand side, This is where in Heathrow, the entire flights were paused for a couple of hours, and it was chaos. And from electronic dashboards to check-in systems, everything went, and thousands of passengers in Heathrow just going down because an IT system went down. Similarly in 2019, British Airways system, thousands of passengers gone back home, queues in airports, multiple airports across the globe where BA flies, and as well as when you have the flights connected to BA also get impacted, huge. The third one is something which everybody of you guys would remember. In 2019 July, there was one small configuration change which was not tested by the so-called Meta now, and impacting FB, Insta, Messenger. It's no more about personal lives of these applications, right? There are businesses who depend upon these applications. And it's the last one is a funny one, wherein you have thousands of shoppers who bought £100 worth of Reebok shoes free, and what they paid is just £8 for their delivery charges. And that was a simple software bug wherein people kept ordering. So just a glimpse about what happens in day-to-day life if IT goes wrong, and that's why it's sort of relevant. Why we, why we need to ensure that the light is on. And today, what we're trying to do is just to give you first an idea about. Just a minute. Let me just check. Yeah, about. What is it about? What is the whole service industry about, or what is the IT operations? I've just categorized it into 4 boxes for mainly for the understanding, and I'll just quickly run through that. The first one is sort of a design as to how we want to service a particular business, during the design stages, and this pretty much part of the product conceptual design stage, wherein how do you design and without considerations, and what considerations you architect the system basically from a service perspective. Again, I'm now also not left the hangover of what Mugundan was speaking about when he took an example about how they design a wing of an aircraft for ensuring that tomorrow when you want to service it, a person can get inside and tight a nut. That's the sort of design considerations of service which goes during the design, and that's why you need to have a proper service strategy and a design, which is very much part of the design phase of the project or the product. That's number one, and if you take about the whole of the IT service life cycle, it starts from there. And then the second part, which is the most important part, is that, or I would say, from a project perspective, the important part is the transition. There is a stage at which wherein it's no more the project mode or the more the development mode, and gets transitioned to sort of the day-to-day. We call it the BAU, business as usual support, and that's where it's the transition phase. And the third one is where the action is, the IT service operations, wherein it's the day-to-day activities, your infrastructure, your data centers, your networks, your switches, your whole lot of things. It needs to be it needs to be managed. It's like often like a car industry, right? I mean to say, if you can buy the best of the cars, and if you don't service it over a period of time, you don't oil it properly, you don't check the air, you don't check the tires, you don't replace your tires, you're not going to get value out of the car. You need to ensure it is serviced properly, it needs maintenance properly. And same as the any IT product, you need to maintain it, you need to check the end of life components, you need to have you will have enough patches and all the sort of things which keeps running, which keeps coming in, which needs to be updated. So it needs to be maintained, and that's what a service operations is. It needs to be taught to people how to use it, because people keep changing. So the whole thing about IT service operations is about how do you maintain it, how do you run it, how do you ensure that lights is on, and how do you ensure that whatever business value was conceived at the start of the product life cycle is being delivered during the service life cycle. And the last one is the continual improvement. It's about how do you improve things. Often what you see is, when you design a product, you would go with certain consideration in terms of transactions or load that of how much this product would have, and these things keep changing. And it's 5 years into the service life cycle, those things keep changing, and it's no more that. So there is need of a continual improvement of how the product is maintained, and it's very much part of taking the product or stretching the product, or we call it over here, sweating the asset. We call it. The reason why is because you have put in a lot of money, developed a project or developed a product, and then now it's in the service, and now the aim of the operations team is to, how do I get maximum value for my investment from it? How do I sweat this asset? How do I stretch it from 5 to 10 years or 10 to 15 years and not invest in it? So just to give you an idea about what is IT operations about, it is not the jazzy stuff of a proper of an architecture world or a development world, or you get to see everyday new things typically which you see, but it's definitely not a monotonous one, which is what it is perceived to be. It is definitely not a monotonous one. It's got its own life in terms of understanding how it is being done, in terms of into how things are. I'll just touch upon the next things, and the reason why I've not gone into defining what each role is, things like that. But what I've done is I've just put some of the functions in typically an IT operations happen. Like I'm just, you have a service desk wherein, this is where the customers or the business users are getting service for IT issues and things like that. Then you have specialized support going into it. We call it the level 2, wherein from a service desk it goes to specialized support, wherein it's a network issue or a database issue or a data center facilities issue or an application issue. You have specialized support. You have incident management, because incident is nothing but when you have an issue, somebody raises an incident and you service it, that's an incident management. When you have issues which you don't understand what it is and you want to do a root cause, that's where you term it as a problem. You have service improvements. I did touch upon continual improvement. You have the change release, which is a big one. I mean to say, you need to manage how frequently you're going to have changes, how frequently you have going to releases to the existing system in production, as well as to ensure things don't go wrong. And people, nowadays IT is treated like something like air which you breathe. It's always there, right? I mean to say, it's not like if your bank comes and says that, okay, the ATMs are not available for you for this weekend because we are doing a maintenance. You said, what is it about? Why do people take so much time? That's because people have belief that these all should be done in the background without impacting me. I need to go and withdraw my money, and I don't care if there is a maintenance in the software which is running the ATM or the core banking solution. That's not my consideration. So people can't afford to be without the service. So that's how it is. So your service improvement and your change releases is very much part of it, to ensure it is managed well without impacting or the least impact to the services which is offered. Configuration is about understanding what is your landscape, how many servers you have, how much desktops you have, or whatever you have in it. Service levels is basically, IT is becoming a very complex world, right? I mean to say, I just want to tell you an example. Like in an airline, before the aircraft takes off, the pilot has something called a load sheet, which we say gets printed, and this load sheet tells the pilot, looking at what is the capacity he can load in the aircraft and how much is getting loaded and what are the different components of it. So you have passengers, you have cargo, you have fuel, you have so many components into it to understand what is the load which has gone into the aircraft. And this is after the doors are closed and he gets the load sheet and he decides, takes a call whether he wants to fly or not. So the single thing of the load sheet is integrated to around 40 odd systems in some of the airlines. So you have 40 systems contributing to make a decision making to the pilot. So it's a very highly complex integrated system. That's what I want to say. And that's where, and often it's managed by different vendors. So you have one which is run as a SaaS solution somewhere in other part of the world, and you have the other one which is run as a platform somewhere. You have the third one which is run by the aircraft itself. You have multiple systems which is there. So it's sort of a web in its own, and that's where all the service levels of different vendors who contribute to one service gets managed, and that's where the contracts and all these things come into picture. Disaster recovery, another important thing. What happens when a disaster like the Heathrow one, which I showed, it turned out that one of their data centers had a big issue, and they switched the data center to their secondary one, the passive one, and some of the applications didn't switch over to the passive one as planned. Big issue. So you need to have it, you need to test it, you need to ensure that it is always on. It's somewhat related to disaster recovery is your business continuity as to, if the service goes down, how do I continue? Tech debt, it's very, very becoming very critical nowadays because of the level of end of life services which is coming to picture. People don't make the right investments, because of which you have end of life. So you will have people still running on old systems, old platforms, oracles of the world or the COBOL of the world, and it's basically you piling up all this debt in terms of technology as to how do you mitigate it. And the capacity management is very much related to scalability. Is basically how do you scale up? And COVID taught us a couple of things, wherein it is not always about scaling up; it's also about scaling down. I have a 100 core database or things like that, and then suddenly you see that instead of running 1 million transactions an hour, I'm doing 100 transactions an hour, and how do I scale down? And so it's about scalability, about scaling up and scaling down, and capacity management. So the reason why I put these functions on the side is each of these functions, if you look at it, has got opportunities from a career perspective on 3 fronts. You have the people who actually run those functions. Second, you have the process people who look into these process and consistently develop and improve on these processes of each of these functions. So if it is a service desk, for example, there are people who are actually doing the service desk function, but there are people who are actually looking at the processes as to how a service desk is run, and working continuously to improve those processes and ensuring that these processes are these functions are measured and improved. So that's the process part. And third is the technology aspect. And the technology aspect is equally interesting as a development aspect, because why? Because there's a lot of automation aspect which is coming into the IT ops world. Gone are the days wherein you are dependent upon people to take decisions in terms of any of the switchovers and or remedial measures. It's more automation which is coming into picture. You have all the intelligence aspects, you have the artificial intelligence aspects, and things like that, which basically looks at it. I'll just give you an example about small level of intelligence. How do you apply in all this automation? Earlier, you had all this events, or basically when something breaks down, that means I don't get a response from an application. That is when an incident gets raised, typically saying that, okay, this is not working, and this server I'm not getting a response, or this network I'm not getting a response, or this application service I'm not getting a response, and raise an event. And now it's more from that reactive mode, it's more moving to more of a proactive mode, wherein you don't look at service and things like that. You look at maybe the transaction volume. So last Saturday between 7 to 8, I had 100 transactions in an hour. And the last 6 months, my average is 102 transactions in an hour. And if I don't get that much level of transactions, and if I see only this Saturday 50 transactions, I raise an alarm. And that's the level of data which we have, which basically goes into the data and understands what is the level of transaction. And this is the level of transaction it should be. And if it is not that level, it means that there is something going wrong. So what I said is that technology is being applied to make it more automated, to make it more proactive, than reactive. The idea is that before the end user or the customer or the end business comes to know that there is an IT issue, IT detects it on their own and fixes it, rather than the end user coming to know. That's the whole idea. So coming back from a career options perspective, this is the multiple functions which is there, and there are enough opportunities in each of these function. If you want to do the function from a people perspective, if you want to work on the process, there are enough things which is there. And if you're working on the technology like automation and improving the resolution time, a lot of work which is happening in terms of technology and automation. So I would say most of the career options within the IT operations world is this. Now it's a very detailed discussion, because you have each of the functions which is there can, especially in, let's take specialized support for example. If you talk about network, it's a big subject on network itself. Abhishek could talk for hours about what does it involve to be becoming a network specialist. Or if you talk about cyber security that's a different completely stream. If you talk with a analytics function, a data and analytics function, it's a completely different stream. So each of this, even just from a support perspective, is a large streams, and I'm not getting into those details. I'm just staying at the periphery of IT operations itself. Just to having the time constraint, just move to my last slide. And I just thought I'll put some bullets, basically, that if you want to do some certifications, what would be good in order to enrich your skills, things like that. So and the IT ops world is very much, I would say 99% or 95% of IT ops is based on ITIL. And the new version is V4, and it has also evolved, to work with the new concepts of development like agile methodologies and things like that. Wherein product development or project development have moved from the typical waterfall, development methodology to the agile way of working, wherein it's not one release at the end of the project, but it's multiple releases. And ITIL has evolved to cope up with to live with these methodologies. And ITIL, I believe, is the fundamental foundation for many of the ops world. So if at all you want to pursue, and I would say you're studying in your 8th semester or something, if you feel the IT ops world is thing, I would say in parallel do an ITIL V4 foundation course. Very helpful, helps you understand the concepts and helps you enrich your skills. And I'm sure that there are the recruiters would admire that. So that's the ITIL one. And then if you want to go into a little bit deep, ITIL Foundation is just a foundation course, and you have multiple courses within ITIL in each of these functions which I said, like for example, service desk, incident management, each of these service improvement, change release, all these functions which I mentioned has got advanced courses within ITIL. But I think that's something for you to do during your job. But I think you can start with ITIL Foundation. Just mention some of the other things like the risk professional courses if you're interested in risk management, disaster recoveries, things like that. Some of the things which you want to learn to understand. As I told you, it's very much moving into a very automated way, wherein you have the functions like wherein there is a thin line differentiating between DevOps and and operation development and operations, and we see that it's getting merged a little bit more, and including cyber security. And that's where you have all these concepts of DevOps and DevSecOps and continuous integration and delivery, all these things coming into picture. Not going into all these things, but just for your consideration, if you want to learn something, if you want to, and each of these things have their own certifications and things like that. I didn't want to pick any particular vendor or anything like that, but certifications, there are certifications which companies who provide on their tools, like for example ServiceNow, which is one of the premier or the maximum running service management tool adopted by a lot of organizations. IBM has got big big certifications on its event management and things like that. So so that's pretty much what I have. It's up to each one of us to understand, read more, and this is just a tip of the iceberg for you to look into more details. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dinesh. It is a very in-depth presentation on IT application development, testing, and support. Thank you very much. Meantime, I request my audience to keep your questions, to shoot your questions on Zoom or YouTube comment box. We will definitely take those questions at the end of this session. Also, please consider liking and subscribing our social media platforms. Next session will be handled by Mr. Arnanti. He will be handling topic consulting ERP systems. Mr. Arman is a senior leader in the IT with 38 years of experience in academic, telecom, and IT domains. He held senior management roles with various major global organizations like Unilever and Coca-Cola. He was part of many tech committees, including member of Gartner ERP review panel, CIO board of Oracle Middle East, advisory panel of Salesforce Middle East. Also, he is a member of Coca-Cola MENA's ERP rollout governing team. Also, he's an entrepreneur, founder of Springtime Solution, and a co-founder of Euphoria Intelligence. Also, previously he was the head of IT, Demac Holding, Coca-Cola for GCC countries, and Unilever Arabia. Also, we are really proud to say that he was like two-time Darsana, he was Darsana president from 2019 to 2021. Let's welcome Mr. Arunan for his presentation. Over to you, Mr. Arunan.
Thanks, Abhishek. I'm audible, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Dinesh and Mugdhan, for those excellent overview of or the in-depth presentation on technology. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of simplify and put them in some boxes. From what Mugdhan spoke about, you would have possibly seen that the landscape of technology is very, very large. And if I want to put them into some boxes, you will see IT infrastructure, which contains basically.
Can you put that into the presentation mode like this is?
You can't see now.
I can see. Can you put it in the slide?
I'll move to slide. Yeah. Current slide. It's okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. Okay. So effectively in the IT world, we have infrastructure, which basically covers the servers, network, that kind of equipment, some electronic manufacturing where our hardware is created. Then we have software. Within software, again, we have multiple productivity tools, just like Microsoft Office or Google Maps. They're all called productivity tools, or email. It can be Gmail, Microsoft's Mail, Google Mail. They're all productivity tools. Then you have embedded system, like what Dinesh spoke about. The airlines runs on, or the cars run on embedded system. I think an aeroplane takes a long distance flight. I think it stores some 2 terabyte or 4 terabyte of data in few hours. That amount of data has been actually captured. So while do software development itself, there are different type of software that's been created for specific purposes, general purposes, then security software, etc. So it's a very large, very complex world. So what I'm trying to do is to just take one part of that, that's ERP, and explain what ERP does and what are the standard ERP software. And anyone who wants to look for a job in the ERP market or the ERP domain, what are the type of jobs available and what are the qualifications that's really required to get there. So that's what I'm really going to cover. And I think what Darsana is actually going to do is that there will be a separate career sessions on each of these areas. There could be a career options on security, for example, or career opportunities on infrastructure. What opportunities are there as a network engineer? What opportunities are there as a telecom engineer? What opportunities are there as a system administrator or a server manager, or a cloud manager? So Darsana will basically run multiple sessions where you can actually go in depth and look at and say what career opportunities are there. So I'm just going to cover one part of that today, and that's ERP. Okay, now what's ERP? ERP basically stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. That doesn't mean anything really. Okay, so what is Enterprise Resource Planning? This is a word that is kind of coined in somewhere in early 1990s when technology came. Companies were trying to get automation going. Okay, and basically that's a set of software that's used to run a company. Any small, medium, large companies run various softwares, like Dinesh mentioned, to get a log system. There are 40 systems connected back on the back side, whereas you just get to see one page, right? So ERP is basically a solution that will allow the company to run its end-to-end backend operation. Earlier days, ERP solution used to come from one vendor. Now, the modern world with the availability of cloud and the exceptionally large amount of integration tools, you can use products from mix and match products from various places. So I'll go a little more in depth. What does ERP cover? Look at an organization. we spoke a lot about cars and aeroplanes. For example, a car company wants to sell a car. Okay, it's very different from a fast-moving consumer good company, how it sells a soap, right? Both of them sell, but a car manufacturing company, so let's, for example, take Maruti. Someone goes to a Maruti's showroom, looks at the car, right? And then he places an order and takes some time for him to get the car. So there's a sales process. And if you're go to a shop and buy a Lux soap, off the shelf you buy, it's also a sales process, but both are very different. So while every company has its own businesses, process become very different. So in a normal company, when someone buys an item, he gets an invoice, which comes from a sales system. When we pay money and pay the money and get a receipt, that actually goes into the accounting system. Now you basically have a problem with that product and call the customer service and say, look, I have a problem. And they raise a ticket or give you a solution that comes from the customer management system, what we call as a CRM system. Okay, now they ship from their factory to the shop or the customer premise or to the retail shop. That is a supply chain management system. Okay, and where production happens, there's manufacturing systems. So in ERP, and there is about people. When an employee joins, okay, through his life cycle in that company, his leave is managed, his payroll is managed, his promotions are managed, his training is managed. That's HRMS system, right? Now you want buy raw material, that's procurement system. So an ERP system consists of all these solutions or all the small modules, and that's what an ERP contains. Now, from a technology perspective, there are two parts. One is companies who create these ERP solutions, and you can find jobs there, IT jobs. And there are companies who implement ERP system where we can actually find jobs. Okay, there are two types. So I'll go to the next slide. These are the world's possibly the largest, not necessarily the best, largest ERP solution creators: SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics, through big three, possibly the biggest players. Then you have Salesforce, does most of it, not everything, Epic or Sage. There could be 20 of them. Now, each of these companies tailor-make all the solution that I just previously shown. They have end-to-end ERP product solutions, and we can get jobs there. And in those jobs, you will basically end up developing, testing, designing the solution. Then you have companies who implement the system where you have customization that happens. You get a standard software, and that software you modify, improve, you configure, and you customize. Customize means you do some coding to modify that. So those jobs sit in the end user community, end user companies. So jobs are available in both sides. And normally you get consultants. We call consulting because the software manufacturers allow consultants to come, understand the business of each company, and modify what changes are required for the core software to make this software suitable for the respective companies. That's where ERP comes to play. Okay, so my focus is totally to come and tell you what jobs are available and where you can go and fit in. Okay, so if you look at an ERP software, on a broad level, every software or ERP system, on the bottom line, you have an underlying database. That's where all data gets stored. Now, there are a lot of databases that's available in the market. You have Oracle's database, you have Microsoft databases. Now, you have a lot of NoSQL databases, Postgre, etc., etc. Okay, so there are very different databases. Normally, ERP products will come back and tell you standard databases that you can actually use. Like as it could be Oracle database, it could be Microsoft SQL database, or it could be MySQL, various databases. Then on top of that, there will be functionalities written by those companies, modules, HR module, finance module, CRM module, sales module, inventory management module, etc. That's where the core function sits. On top of that, there will be user configuration. We're going to test upon it, UI and UX. Each company would want to see, while the underlying software could be same, it could be the way you want to see it is actually going to be different. If I can take an airline's example, you can buy an airline from a Boeing or an Airbus, but each airlines company will configure the seating how they want to look like that. It could be, the space, the distance. Budget airlines will cram the seats. Luxury airlines will spread the seats. Business class got a different set of configuration, etc. Same way, software can also be really configured. Or you buy an apartment in a building, you get a basic shell and core apartment which you can configure. Software also can be configured, modified to meet your process and your specific requirement. That's where user interface comes. Then there is a layer that I have not really spoken about here. That's there in the bottom, reporting. Each company has a different reporting requirement, and each company has a different analytics requirement. Most ERP solutions come with standard reports or reporting software, but in the current world, there are a lot of analytics solutions available. One is reporting, second is analytics. This is what Mukundan again touched upon. You have an election result, you do a lot of analysis. You have COVID, you have to do a lot of analysis. That's analytics. Reporting is actual basic core data statistics. So most ERP solutions come with the reports, and there are jobs where people can sit and write reports, but there are analytical tools. You have Cognos, you have business objects, you have Oracle Business Intelligence tool, you have Tableau. There are so many products available. Each of them has technical roles where you can actually get a job to create that. Now, the other part is available right now is you can actually integrate a lot of other products. That means you allow free data exchange between systems using integration techniques. Now, this could be a hard integration where you wire it, firmly fix it, or you can have middleware software where it loosely couples, allows you the data to flow smooth in a seamless way without for the end user to configure without a hard technical jobs that's required. So broadly, these are the modules. The reason I'm presenting this is when I put the next slide, where you can actually look at what type of jobs are available in each of this, it'll help. Okay. Now I'm straight coming into what jobs roles are available. If you start looking at them, there are core technical jobs, okay, where you really need to sit and code, or you need to sit and actually do technical work. Okay, technical work is not all about coding. Let's understand this. A database administrator's job is very technical, but that's not necessarily the whole thing is coding, but the other things you do. Okay, there are functional jobs which I'll explain. There are support jobs. This is what Dinesh was speaking about in IT operation. You do a lot of type. You can do technical support, you can do operational support. And your level of technical knowledge will actually vary from type of job you do. Then there's a massive scale of training job. You can do technical training, you can do end user training. So there's opportunities there. Then business analysis. Business analysis is what determines the specific requirement of an organization. If you are on an end user consulting organization where you do consult, and if you're an IT organization that creates the software, business analysis is what determines what functionality should be built onto those products. They work with the end users, they work with the consulting companies to determine what functionality that need to be built into the product. Whereas end user will determine, look at the product and say, what functionality I require for my organization, what functionality I need to configure, how I need to configure. Documentation becomes a very, very important part because in the current world, there is so much of transition happens. People keep changing jobs, systems keep changing. If you do not documentation, the system changeover, transitions, switching of people becomes very, very complex. So there's a lot amount of jobs available in technical documentation, end user documentation, application documentation, etc. Then quality control, again, Mukundan touched upon it. Quality control, quality assurance. I'll come to that in the next slide. Okay. Core technical jobs. Okay. There are various types of technical jobs, and I'm focusing mostly on freshers, and not really with a lot of experienced people. Each of this role, there's a track that you can grow. I'm mostly focusing for people either freshers or people who are in the first 2 or 3 years of their experience. Your database administrator jobs, where each of our database you can administrate and manage it. That's core DBA job. Now, app DBA job are specific to ERPs. If you are buying an Oracle application, Oracle ERP, or you're buying an SAP ERP, there are application database that's kind of customized to meet the requirements of that application. So the transition from a core DB to an app DB is not a very complex thing. Can be possible, but there are some differences in both the job roles. Then we speak about core developers. And normally people wonder, we talk about IT, what happens all the time? Now, core developers are the people who will sit and do the coding, like Mukdan said, but their job is not just to code. They also normally do the first round of testing, and their job is also to effectively look at the business specification and ensure that the code you build is in line with the industry standards, in line with the other pieces the team builds across. Then on ERP specific, there are people who develop forms and reports. These are functionality specific to they'll still write code, but not as complex codes or as necessarily detailed code as a regular code developer. They'll have to do some, on top of the ERP, they'll have to do some development. API developers are the people who write interfaces, application protocol interfaces to connect between multiple systems. So you need to know protocols on both sides, and then you write codes based on what interchange need to happen. Okay, and each of them got different technologies that's actually used. Now you have middleware specialists to actually configure systems so that multiple system can talk. It could be on what you call open protocols, or it could be on specific protocol that you actually create. Now there are technical implementers that we spoke about. When you buy a computer, on that you install Microsoft Office, you install WhatsApp, you install your Gmail. Okay, these are basic installations. When you buy a enterprise level software, there are complex installations involved in that. Some of them, and they're not at desktop level, they're at the server level implemented. You need to decide what type of access to be permitted, what are modules to be implemented, what should be blocked, what security need to go in. So technical implementers jobs are very technical, and these are very specialized jobs, and each application will have a different skills and a different learning to go in there. Solution architect and the technical architects roles are not really for freshers. These are really for people with experience. So I'll actually park that and move on. Okay, this is my course slide, or this is my more detailed slide. I'm talking about it. Who can become what? A database administrator. Anybody who wants to really become a core job, computer science, electronics, electrical. I know DBS or mechanical, so be it. But if you have the foundation on computer science and MCA, you can become a database administrator. But you will require to do specific DBA courses. Each of the database companies like Oracle runs OCP, Oracle Certified Professional. Microsoft has Microsoft Certified Administrator courses. Each of them got specific courses. To become a DBA, you'll require in a good engineering background, because you need to understand some amount of hardware to optimize the databases, and you need to have a good understanding of the software implement, because to decide what port to open, what kind of disaster recovery planning to do, what kind of backup strategy to adopt. So that's a very technical job, but any fresher can actually go in there and very quickly pick it up. Developer we spoke about already, and in my personal view is that anyone from any stream can become a developer. Java, Microsoft.NET, various platforms, C++. There are various tracks where you can become a developer. And core developer, if you have a logical mind and you are fairly good on mathematical modeling understanding, you can go back and become a developer. But you have an engineering background, it makes it easier for you, and especially if you have a computer science background, your understanding of hardware will help you to become a better programmer, or let's sit and learn that. System implementers, I spoke about it. They're very specialized jobs with hardware, with software. And again, preferably, it's a very core technical job. Technical consultants are very specific to ERP. Those people will sit and configure the ERP applications. those who will sit and look at and say what module, where needs to go in there, how the interfaces are happening, etc. That's a technical job. Functional consultant are people who look at functionality, each of them start configuring. System will give configuration options. You need to have a good understanding of that particular product. And again, certification courses are available there. For example, if you're going to Oracle, Oracle has Oracle certified professional, Oracle certified administrator courses, or SAP has similar, Microsoft has similar. All of them offer courses if you learn them. And you can have an Oracle certified HRMS professional or a finance professional or a supply chain professional, where you will learn only that module, and you can sit and understand how supply chain functionalities are required and sit and decide what is required for your specific organization, what to allow. Each user gets what module, what's approval hierarchy. For example, you want to create a purchase order in a system. Who can create a purchase order? Who can verify it? Who can approve it? And then who can actually pay money out of that? That's a workflow configuration. Those things are configured by a functional consultant. Or an HRMS decides, based on grade, who should get what bonus, or who should get what increment, or who should get how many days of leave, who's eligible for what. Those are configured by the functional consultants. Technical support people are somebody who actually normally sits between end users and the technical team. When issues are identified or reported, these are the people who look at it first. They come back and look at and identify whether it's a user problem. Sometimes no problem could not be a system issue at all. It could be the way user understood how to use it, or it could be just that the user did not know what's the right procedure. So technical people they understand how system should function. They know technically how this actually working, and they should do the first line of debugging and do a first line of technical support. That's a technical support job. And these people can really later on move into functional role or technical role later. Okay, anybody can get onto that. Business analyst role is a pure play role where you understand the processes. There are two roles: business analyst, system analyst, can call technical analyst. In a business side, these are the people who will sit with the end user, understand what are the modules, what are the functionality that is required here. We should do this. These are allowed, these are not allowed. For example, they can go back and look at and say on a sales side, they say, we cannot take orders more than $10,000 a day. Or go back and say, if this order value is more than 20,000, this should go to a director. If more than 50,000, should go somewhere else, right? Or this process should not be available in this company, etc., etc. Business analysts are the people who understand business and translate this business requirement into a document, or in a way the technical people will understand, so that they can write the code or they can configure the system accordingly. So very important role. It can be very non-technical role. Most of the companies have this as, if they get it wrong, everything else goes wrong. So business analysts need to understand business well. They need to understand what the system's capabilities are and ensure that they define those requirements very clearly. So very interesting job. Those who are not very technical but has a business mindset, excellent job to take it up. Okay, technical analyst role, again, people who understand the technical requirement, do sizing, etc. And sorry, let's move. You basically can understand what is the technical requirement and say sizing, etc. are done by them. Technical role. Okay, so in the last column, you can see that whether there is technical or non-technical. Training, again, normally people don't think about it. A lot of opportunities as trainers. There's a lot of shortfall of trainers. There are two types of trainers. Trainers who understand the application very well and then goes and trains the users how to use that system. Okay, they can teach what is required, how it is required, how to use the system, best practices, tips and tricks in optimization, etc. Technical trainers are the people who will train the technical team. They understand the system very well. They understand the underlying operating methods very well. and train them on what is required. They may not be very good programmers, etc., but they'll know functionality very well, technically configuration very well. Okay, so that's technical writer, trainers. Technical writers, and their very important role, normally overlooked. These are the people who will actually write the documentation. In a system level, there are multiple types of documentation. There are hardcore technical documentation that is written for the understanding of programmers and developers and the system administrators, etc. Where anybody comes into a new role, they can look at it and say, okay, this is how the system is configured or created, etc. Then you have custom documentation specifically done on a company, on a site. For the Oracle ERP implemented in this company, there are specific changes made for the core system. You write documentation. That documentation is valid only for that company. Why changes are made. Then you write documentation for end users, for users to look at and see how system to be used, how bugs to be reported, etc. So multiple roles available. Quality assurance, Mugundan mentioned it again earlier, wherein there are 2-3 types of quality assurance and quality control. Quality control is a role where at the time of implementation, the core team ensures that standards are followed and the system implementations are done in the right way. Okay, and then there's a team that will actually test and ensure that there are no bugs in the system and the functionalities are working for what it is designed. The requirement could be something different. Either the developer did not understand correctly and wrote the code differently, or someone configured it differently, or genuinely missed some conditions to do that. Okay, and this is where this QA QC people, they also write test cases telling that before you roll out a system, look at all these functionalities and make sure that all of them work in this way. So you write positive test cases, negative test cases. In the sense, they'll say this should work and this should not work. This thing should not actually happen. So both types of test cases are there. And there are testers who actually follow this procedure and do hardcore testing. That's a slightly lower level job, beginner's job, but again, very important jobs. So all these roles are available within IT domain. There are a lot more other jobs which I didn't want to get into. We can speak about it. I didn't speak about the security hardening of this applications. We did not speak about the infrastructure, etc. On a core ERP level, all these positions are available. All these type of roles are available, and most of those roles actually are available in many other functionalities. So this is more of generic in nature. Okay, so this is where I stop. Thank you for the patiently listening. It's open for question and answers. Questions can be open for any of us up here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arunan. It was like quite an informative session, and thank you very much for explaining like how complex is the system. And like to be honest, I really didn't know that there is like this many job roles than this one. So now it's a Q&A section. So we have received like quite a few questions from the audience, but at this time we have to cherry pick a few questions out of it due to the time limitation. Now, all right, let me grab the questions. So the first question is actually to Mr. Dinesh. Question is, had a question on topic of proactive versus reactive approaches in IT operations that you covered very well. Could you please throw some light on the outlook possibilities around the predictive part of IT ops, especially in like artificial intelligence and machine learning based ops?
Yeah, I mean, say good topics for a 50-year-old person to talk, right? I mean, say interesting. But yeah, I mean, say this is where it is going to, right? I told you the objective is to how to detect an incident, before I wouldn't say an incident, before how to detect a trend much before it turns out to be an incident, much before it actually impacts the user experience. So the user, the user is agnostic to what happens behind the screen or behind the scene. That's where the IT operations in the automated way world works. So I think I touched upon it when is it, so, you have all this multiple infrastructure and application components, which when combined and integrated provides a service. That's how it is in the underlying world. And each of these components can generate logs. And these logs is what forms the basis for your data analytics and learning and all this sort of things which is there. Like just to name a tool, like for example, Splunk, which is very widely being used right now nowadays, is a big aggregator of all these logs. So you have multiple components, right from your network switches to your actual applications. I'm not talking about servers, their thresholds, all this sort of things, contributing to these logs. And what happens is, there are tools which basically, look at this, do the data analytics and come back and say that, yep, I'm smelling a trend. If it goes like this, one hour down the lane, your service is going to go down. That's the sort of intelligence which is getting applied. And how does it learn it? It learns on the previous data. So it says, like, last time when your load was this, and it looks into that that data and learns from it. And that's where the artificial intelligence comes into picture and learns from it, basically to say that last time when this sequence happened, this is what happened at the end when you had an incident. And now 1 hour before the actual incident, the incident is already raised and a particular service engineer is already on the job. So that's what it. Now there is an interesting second part to it. The first part is about identifying the incident. And I remember 1 year back, or 1.5, 2 years back, before this pandemic, we were we were working on a project, and we were always there. Suddenly, like, it gets raised as a ticket and an incident by an event, and people come to know that there is something going wrong and we should do something about it before it actually hits the business. And now the second part is basically about, how do I resolve it without involving someone? Is the remedial action also, how can we make it automated? So let's say that, how can I fix it? So that's the second part of automation which comes into picture. So you, on the one side, you apply all this intelligence technologies and analytics to identify there is a wrong trend or an unhealthy trend, which might cause an incident. And that's where a lot of work happening. And the second part is basically about, how do I resolve it? So it's maybe I would switch the service to a passive server. Or if I have a farm of servers, there is one naughty one in the middle out of the 10. And what I do is I just take out the 8th one or the 7th one, which might cause the whole farm a problem. Things like that. I have a wrong switch, which is basically causing a problem. How do I divert my traffic to the next one? So I have a plan B. So, and how can we automate these switches without human intervention? So that's the resolving aspect of it. And so this is where a lot of things, and there are some beautiful tools which is there, like for example, App Dynamics, which is one of the another big tool which is deployed across organization, large landscape organization, which is amazing. I mean to say, and that's a point which I was mentioning on certifications. Like for example, if you look at App Dynamics or Splunk or ServiceNow, all these tools have their individual certifications which could help. Because it's got its own features and functions, and these products are driving more into these concepts like artificial intelligence and pruning and learning from data which is there. So I hope I answered my question, but I'm happy if you have any further doubts to answer back.
Thank you, Mr. Dinesh. Next question is more about key skills and long break. The question is, what are the key skills IT employers looking in freshers? As Mr. Moodhan mentioned, NASSCOM declared only 25% of graduates considered as employable. What can we do to make our younger generation more employable? Here's like an additional question to that. There is a huge number of graduates who got a long career break due to the many reasons. Similarly, there are some large number of graduates who never work, especially young female graduates. Is that possible to nurture certain skills to make the employable in IT industry after a considerable break?
So I will take that, Abhishek. First part, skill, and I will actually point to Arunan's last 2 slides. And if you look at that, right, most of the roles he has put is any branch. And the reason is two. Unlike any other kind of engineering branch, for example, you're a civil engineer or a metallurgy engineer and all, it takes 4 years to teach you the core subjects, right? The good thing with the IT is, one is most of the large organizations has figured out a way to teach you in a very, very, very short time. And when I say short time, it can be even a day or less than that, right? They have the ability to teach you. That is why, yeah, that 2 lakh promises I told you, that's the top 5 IT companies in the first slide. These companies like TCS, Infosys, Wipro and all run a academic machine inside their whole organization. For example, I mean, I come from Infosys, so I can talk about that. They have a facility in Mysore which can train 15,000 people at any given point of time. And this is not just simply training. I mean, it's some of you would have seen the photos and all. It's kind of a built like a university. It is in-house. Everybody stays there. 8 o'clock in the morning, everybody has to go and swipe in till 6 o'clock in the evening. And after that, of course, if they want, they can continue till I think 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock for safety reasons. So they have figured out a way to train you in a way, or the fastest and quickest way possible. That's one. The second is, most of this services kind of stuff doesn't need everything from your foundation. Like, I mean, if you're designing, I used to design rockets for living at some point of time, right? So my problem is extremely complex. If I want to choose a material which goes in space at say minus 210 degrees centigrade, I need to know metallurgy, I need to know material science, I need to know machining stuff, I need to know the strength of material. I mean, tons of stuff, and it's hardcore engineering, right? But if in IT we can compartmentalize that, saying, okay, you want to do this job, you can learn X piece and you can become an expert on that. I'm nowhere telling that your experience will become more and more irrelevant when you get more experience. Obviously, those architects and all need experience and they learn the same way like any other branches. But over here, it is extremely easy to train a person and then bring them up to speed. So to summarize, if you have, and I used to tell this to the people, freshers coming to my team, and saying, I just expect common sense from you guys, first of all. Second is, you need the right attitude. Don't come and tell me that I can't do that. I've never seen it, I can't do that, right? You have necessary support and infrastructure to train you to do that. And I have trained hundreds and hundreds of people doing it. Don't come and tell me that I can't do it. Of course, the problem will become very, very big and very hard at the first go. Few days down the line, you will start solving those problems. So that is that's for the first one. If you do anything like a certification, you specialize in a project and do something, that's an added benefit, no doubt about that. No knowledge is going to be negatively, I mean, putting you in a negative spot, but definitely not having any of the core IT skills is not going to put you in a negative spot. That's point number one. Now, the second point on people who have probably passed out a few years back or who have taken a break and all. In fact, coincidentally, 3 years back, Infosys started doing something like this, especially, but that was only for ladies, saying if they have taken a longer break, especially family reasons, kids, or elderly care, all those things, they specifically launched a recruitment for those kind of people. But to be honest, in India, the talent pool availability is so big, it's much more easier to go and tap the graduate community, fresh graduates, campus graduates, rather than going into and taking this kind of people. There may be certain organizations or companies which are doing it, but that are very specialized and very rare to see. But I mean, I don't know, if you go to US, so I'll give you my own example. One day I was in US, I was working with Microsoft, and that was a guy who was actually I was supporting him, even though he came for the meeting. We met the client, he had no clue what we had to do, so he came as a Microsoft representative. And once the meeting was over, luckily it went well, and then we were talking, and he said, you know what, I was working as a policeman for 20 years, and then when I went back to school and studied IT, and now I am with Microsoft, right? That happens in a very mature kind of society. Probably 5, 10, 15 years down the line, it may happen in India also. But at this point, you really have to put a lot of effort to go and train yourself in something, either the software tool or technology, to get into this kind of environment if you really seriously mean that. It's not easy. Yeah, I mean, for fresh graduates, it may be relatively easy, but for somebody who has taken a break, it is not that easy. You have to show something. You have to show some certification, some small projects you have done, some experience, something you have to show. Otherwise, it's very, very hard. That's it, Abhishek.
Can I
Thank you,
supplement?
Mr.
Yeah, please.
See, in my career, first 4 years I did teaching. Then 8 years I worked in telecom before switching to IT. So I think that's possible. And like Mukundan said, you have the right attitude and you really want to do it. I think it's possible, but IT line, there's continuous non-stop learning. And you're not willing to learn wrong line, if you're willing to learn right line.
You have to keep hitting the door, right? Keep knocking. The first one is not going to open unless you're very, very lucky. Probably the 20th or 30th will open, but you have to keep knocking the door. That's very important.
So the bottom line is, like in Indian situation, it is difficult, but it's not impossible.
Right.
It's very possible.
Thank you, Mr. Mohan. I really liked your comment on common sense, but unfortunately, common sense is not that common. So let's move to the next question. Do we get opportunities to go to America, Europe, Japan, etc.? How many years of experience is required to go?
Okay, again, I will refer to my, I'm jumping in, please add Arun and Dinesh. See, I will give my own experience, right? I joined Infosys on 19th December 1999. The whole reason I actually joined was my wife was in Bangalore and I was in Trivandrum, I was in ISRO. So I tried to get a transfer and that didn't work out. So I figured out it's actually getting a job is easier than getting a transfer. So I went over there and I told my boss during interview itself that this is the reason I'm moving to Bangalore. February 20th, if I remember correctly, 2000, no, not in February, February 10th, 50th day, I was in Germany. Of course, without me liking to go there, right? My situation was very different. But things have changed now. At the time, the visa rules and the immigration rules were much more relaxed than what it is today. But the demand in the last, say, 12 months or so is unprecedented. And in my 22, 23 years of experience, this is the first time I'm seeing clients ready to pay more to the same work people are doing. Otherwise, it has been always other way, saying, cut the price, right? Today, clients are telling, I'm ready to pay you more, give me people. Right, and if you look at some of the data from US, Germany, UK, Australia, everywhere they have put up something like express visas, and in US the H1B approval is 97%, which has never happened in the history, it seems, in the last 1 year. Right, Germany has a special entry for IT professionals. Australia, which used to have one of the toughest immigration rules, has given an open ticket. You come over here, we don't have people to work. UK has also relaxed the rules, right? So these are the top destinations normally people go from IT, and plenty of opportunities. Things will change. I mean, maybe next year it may go down a little bit, next year it will become more demands, all those things. But at the end of the day, if you are in this field, whether there are times when I have literally told my boss that please don't send me anywhere, I want to be here. I have different reasons to be here, but there are enough people who will eventually end up, especially the services industry. Product industry could be very different, but definitely the services industry, there are enough opportunities. I think Dinesh has something.
Yeah. So I just have a question back for the person who has asked this, is that, why do you want to go to US or UK or Australia or wherever is it? There are two things. There are people who feel that you want to go there and settle down, and and if your objective is that, then there are different opportunities and avenues by which you can go there. You can find something, and always in US, in Maryland or in California, you would get a guy from Andhra who can somehow manage H1B for you. Don't worry about it. You will get it. If you want to go there, you will get it. So it's not necessary that you find a job in Bangalore for you to go to America. That's a different thing. So my question, the reason why I asked this question is because if your objective is that, then it's a different thing. But if your objective is to, if you feel that I will climb the ladder in terms of career and technology and exposure into my career and technology better, then probably that's not the right choice. You would rather end up working on better, interesting stuff sometimes in India, because a lot of sort of R&D and a lot of new technologies get adopted much faster in India than in other places. You have a whole lot of legacy, and I touched the topic of tech debt, which is there. Whole lot of tech debt things which is over there for which they don't find people, and often it is that the Indians are the right people to go over there. So you got to be very clear as a fresh graduate. You got to be clear why you want to go to any place and for what. If you're clear on your objective, then it is different. That's 2 cents from my side.
All right. We go to the next question. So it's more about like, if I realize after some time that IT is not for me, can I switch? If yes, where, and will I lose my experience?
Arun, you want to try?
We answered that question already. I am the example. You can always switch. And I don't think there is any, see, again, maybe just supplementing what Dinesh said. Why do you want to switch? If you think you have made a career mistake, and this is not something that you like, obviously change it. But my general feel is that if you like the adrenaline, I don't think you switch. But if you want to switch, that's very possible. And it also will depend on where you really want to switch. Like I have mentioned, within IT itself, there are technical, non-technical role. And if an organization itself, there are other jobs you can move in. Now you're looking for a core engineering role, then I don't think your experience will really count if you're switching. But whether you want to do it or not, you want to switch it, you will know in first 1 year. If you're not happy here and you're not understanding what is really required here and is not your level of competency, first 1 year. And I don't think really count that first 1 year or 2 years of experience. But I don't think after 5 years, it will take you 5 years to, or anyone 5 years to know this is a line to change. That's more of a hypothetical question, but possible, very much possible.
It's definitely coming from a fear of unknown mindset. So
yeah,
all right.
Just want to add one.
Yeah.
Just want to add one thing into what he said. If you look at the people who go to, from the TCSs and the Infosys and the Wipros, people who go to the US or Australia and things like that, you see after 2-3 years, boom, they're gone. They just vanished. They move into mostly their client. Do we really think that all of them are moving into the respective IT world in the client or in some other places? Absolutely no. I think around 50% of the people who move into a business function. So there are a lot of people who would be working on a IT function for a particular business domain, and it so happens that after 3 years or 4 years or 5 years of them working in that business domain, they move to that particular business itself as a business function and a business business executor rather than an IT person. So it's quite common, and these are sort of people who keep moving. So I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that once you're in IT, you will be in IT. You can move across.
Let me just supplement what Dinesh said. If you're an IT organization, this may be a little harder, but you are doing technology in an end user organization, that's extremely common. And in fact, IT people have preferred to take general management role because they have an overview of the whole organization, because the way they implement the technology, they'll have a good understanding of everything that happens. So most often you find IT folks with or a finance folks with a general management degree moving to senior management role these days in end user companies. Technology company, that's a little different.
So due to the limitation of time, I will pick one more question. It's like, I'm not good in English. Is this going to be an issue in IT?
It's not only going to be an issue in IT, it's going to be an issue in general. If you are going to take a job, basically in a corporate, solid corporate environment, if you are taking into a government organization, etc., it may not be a problem. And if you're taking a role in a corporate environment, career growth wise, it's not a question of English, it's a question of clear-cut communication. Your ability to comprehend and communicate is very fundamental. So English is important, and would recommend people to practice English. That's one issue with especially students coming out of colleges in Kerala, we have the temptation to really speak in Malayalam most of the time. Most of us had that problem, but learning English is not difficult. It's general reading, and that's my view on it. And I would recommend people to actually start speaking English and communicate in English. It's just habit, and that certainly will help. That's my take on it. Others might have a different view.
Dinesh or Mundar, you want to add anything to this one, or can we go?
It's a very good question, actually. I'm a firm believer that a good English speaker or a good English communicator is no way any sort of KPI for understanding a person's common sense or capability. These are two different things. But the fact of the market is that you are servicing whole lot of clients and people, and the industry is such that the main communication mode is English, and that's where Arunan's point makes makes very relevant. So you have two things. I mean to say there is a little bit of the Indian IT industry is such that like in some mature markets, you find people who are 15 years, 20 years, core developers, programmers who are very focused and working on niche technologies, and the guy speaks only Spanish, for example. It is there, and these guys make real money. But the Indian market is unfortunately a little different, wherein you feel now also that if you want to climb the ladder, it is about moving to management. It's about moving into a architect role or designing more, and that's where the communication aspects come into the picture. You're put in front of a client, you're put in front of a customer meeting, all this sort of things, and if you don't really perform, then and that's where your talent and your intent and your capabilities are a different aspect, and presenting that is something different, and you need to have a balance of both, and that's where I think English becomes relevant.
So my quick input is it's a hygiene part, right? You don't have to be expert, but you should be able to articulate the bare minimum, right? And I still had people who are kind of 10 years experience in my team who are not great in communicating, etc. But they more than compensate with their technical knowledge. I mean, if I have a problem with the code, they will fix it in faster than anybody else, right? But then the entry gate will not open if you are almost zero. You have to find an entry. You need a bare minimum. I mean, I don't know whether that's 30%, 40%, 50%, I have no clue. I mean, every companies will do it in their own way. But you need a bare minimum. That bare minimum is not there, it is extremely hard.
Thank you, dear panel members. Unfortunately, we are running out of time and we have to end this session now. But we assure you that we will be answering all of your questions. Please reach out to our social media pages in Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, or the Facebook or YouTube. Once again, thank you very much, everyone for joining us today. Good night and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for a nice session.
Thank you.